You tell yourself it's love. The butterflies, the longing, the ache in your chest when they don't text back. You wake up thinking about them. You go to sleep with the silence ringing in your ears. Some part of you knows this isn't how love should feel, but another part clings to it, romanticizes it, calls it passion, chemistry, fate. But Carl Jung would challenge that narrative. He would ask you to stop, to go inward, to ask yourself, what am I really calling love? Because not everything that feels like love is love. Sometimes it's trauma in disguise. Sometimes it's our shadow. Sometimes it's our inner child reaching out through our adult relationships, hoping someone will finally stay. And here's the hard truth. When love consistently feels like pain, persistent, soul-deep, identity-eroding pain, it's not love, at least not the kind that heals. Jung once said, we don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That means facing the part of ourselves that confuses suffering with meaning, that believes love is something to earn, that sees absence as a challenge, not a boundary. You see, real love doesn't destabilize you. It doesn't keep you guessing. It doesn't pull you into a pattern of anxious highs and despairing lows. Real love grounds you. It gives you space to breathe, to grow, to be. It's not perfect, but it's consistent. It's not without conflict, but it's never careless. So if your experience of love has always felt like anxiety, like walking on emotional eggshells, like shrinking yourself to be acceptable, this isn't about love. This is about pattern. Pain is not random. In Jungian psychology, everything painful is also meaningful. Pain points to something unresolved, unhealed, unseen. So when love feels like pain, the question isn't, what's wrong with me? It's, what is this pain trying to teach me? Most often, the answer lies in our past. Let's say you had a parent who was emotionally unavailable. Maybe they were distracted, addicted, or overwhelmed. Maybe they loved you but didn't know how to show it. As a child, you interpreted that as, I have to work for love, I have to be good, I have to be quiet, I have to earn it. You internalized the idea that love is something you chase, not something you receive. And now, as an adult, you find yourself drawn to people who are hard to get, people who breadcrumb you, people who say, I'm just not ready, and yet keep you emotionally tethered. People who leave you hanging but somehow make you feel like you're the problem. That pain you feel, it's not because you love them. It's because your inner child sees them as a second chance. A chance to finally be chosen. A chance to prove you are lovable. This is what Jung called a complex, an emotionally charged pattern in your unconscious that gets triggered by certain people or situations. These complexes aren't logical. They aren't about your current reality. They're about the past repeating itself through the present. You think you're in love, but really you're in a psychological reenactment. And because your unconscious mind is always seeking resolution, you are drawn, again and again, to people who mirror your original wound. Modern neuroscience backs this up. When you're in a relationship with someone who is inconsistent, sometimes available, sometimes not, your brain releases dopamine irregularly. This is called intermittent reinforcement. It's the same mechanism that keeps people addicted to slot machines. Most of the time you get nothing, but once in a while you win. That win, a kind message, a compliment, a night of affection, is enough to keep you hooked. You stay not because they nourish you, but because your nervous system is trapped in anticipation. You've bonded not through safety, but through anxiety. And the more uncertain the relationship, the more intense the craving. And because our culture equates intensity with love, you mistake this craving for deep connection. But it's not love, it's emotional gambling. And here's the tragedy. The less consistent someone is, the more attached you become. That's not chemistry, that's a trauma bond. To the unhealed parts of us, chaos is comforting. This is where Jung's concept of the shadow becomes essential. The shadow is the part of you you were forced to hide in order to survive. It's where you store your unmet needs, your anger, your grief, your unworthiness. And it doesn't sit quietly. It shows up in your relationships. It chooses for you when you don't realize it. If your shadow believes that love must hurt to be real, then you will subconsciously choose people who fulfill that prophecy. You won't do it on purpose. You'll say, we just have a strong connection. You'll say, they're complicated. You'll say, they've been hurt before. But really, you're just repeating what you learned in childhood, that love comes in small doses, that love must be earned, that you don't deserve to be fully held, and your shadow won't stop this cycle until you acknowledge it. Let's talk about the spark. You meet someone, you can't stop thinking about them. Everything they do feels charged, you feel a pull. You're hooked, and it's only been a few days. You call it chemistry. But if you look closer, it's anxiety. That heart-racing feeling isn't passion, it's uncertainty. And it's triggering your attachment system, not in a healthy way, but in a way that mirrors old wounds. This is why securely attached people often don't feel as exciting at first. They're consistent, predictable, honest. They're not playing games. But you've been trained to associate love with not knowing where you stand. So safety feels strange, stability feels dull. But that's not because they're wrong for you, it's because you've never known love without fear. Until you know what calm love feels like, you'll keep mistaking emotional chaos for intimacy. Jung believed that the first step toward transformation is awareness. You can't change what you won't see. So here's the hard question. Are you in love with the person, or are you in love with the idea of being chosen? Because sometimes what hurts the most isn't losing them. It's losing the fantasy that their love could finally make you feel whole. But that wholeness, it doesn't come from another person. It comes from you. It comes when you stop trying to rewrite the past. It comes when you grieve the love you never got. It comes when you stop asking why they won't love you and start asking why you believe you have to suffer to be loved at all. At some point, you get tired. Not of them, but of yourself. Of the version of you that begs for affection, that rationalizes red flags, that confuses silence with depth and mixed signals with fate. You reach a breaking point, and that's when healing begins. Not because you've figured it all out, but because you've finally stopped lying to yourself. You stop calling confusion chemistry. You stop calling pain growth. You stop calling their absence a test of your loyalty. And you start calling it what it is, unavailable love. You begin to learn that love doesn't require a mask. You don't have to shrink to be palatable. You don't have to earn your worth. You don't have to prove that your needs are valid. You can just be. And the right people, they will stay, not because you convinced them, but because they are capable of connection. That's the kind of love Jung points us toward, a love that heals, a love that integrates, a love that makes you more yourself, not less. You can grieve what you never received and still grow beyond it. You can mourn the love that was never given, the hand that never held yours, the words you never heard, and still write a new story. That's what individuation offers, not a perfect life, but an authentic one. One where you are no longer at war with yourself, where your value isn't measured by someone else's ability to hold space for you, where you don't need to perform, shrink, or self-abandon to be enough. As Rumi wrote, the wound is the place where the light enters you. And while that light doesn't always come quickly, it does come, first in flickers, then in flames. You begin to notice how different peace feels, how clarity feels, how respect feels, and most of all, how self-love feels, not the fluffy kind, but the hard-earned kind, the kind forged in the fire of loneliness, grief, and waking up to your own worth. Eventually, your boundaries strengthen, not because you've become colder, but because you've become clearer. You stop letting chaos define the rhythm of your relationships. You stop entertaining people who only show up when it's convenient for them. You stop rewriting your needs just to fit into someone else's emotional availability. Slowly but surely you realize that boundaries aren't walls to keep love out. They're doors to let the right love in. You no longer negotiate with inconsistency. You no longer stretch yourself into someone unrecognizable just to keep someone barely invested. You no longer make room in your life for people who leave you questioning your worth, doubting your voice, or erasing your needs. You start to understand that presence, real presence, is not about physical proximity or sweet words. It's about emotional safety. And anyone who makes you feel like you have to earn that safety over and over is not loving you. They're managing you. You stop begging to be heard because you've learned how to listen to yourself, to trust the voice inside you that says, "This doesn't feel right." That quiet intuition you used to ignore becomes your compass. It doesn't scream, it whispers, but now you listen. You no longer cling to those who treat your presence like an afterthought. You stop hoping they'll notice the effort you've poured in. You stop collecting crumbs and calling them a feast. You stop justifying poor treatment as just how they are. Because now you understand that love isn't proven by how long you can hold on, it's proven by how quickly you let go of what dishonors you. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. That electric feeling, the rush, the nervousness, the waiting, the obsession, it isn't connection, it's anxiety. And when your body no longer associates adrenaline spikes with affection, you start to see things more clearly. That slow, steady peace you once called boring, that's actually safety. That's your nervous system learning to exhale. You stop asking people to be what they've already shown you they cannot be. The red flags, you no longer interpret them as challenges. You stop projecting potential onto patterns. You don't cling to fantasy. You observe reality. If they ghost, you don't chase. If they deflect, you don't decode. You let the truth be enough. And most importantly, you stop giving your heart to those who see it as a mirror for their ego rather than a home. Because now you know you are not hard to love. You were simply offering your love to people who weren't emotionally available enough to receive it. People who didn't know how to hold space for something real. People who saw your vulnerability not as beauty, but as leverage. People who liked the version of you they could control, but not the version that stood in her power. It's not that you asked for too much, it's that you asked the wrong people. So now you ask yourself different questions. Not why won't they stay, but why am I still tolerating this? Not how can I be better for them, but why do I feel I'm not enough as I am? Not what's wrong with me, but why do I feel safest in relationships that hurt? Carl Jung believed the soul longs for wholeness, not perfection, but integration. And to become whole, you have to reclaim all the pieces of yourself that you abandoned just to be loved. The neediness you've been taught to hate, that's your inner child, asking to be seen. Not to be punished or ignored, but to be held. To be told, you're allowed to want closeness. You're allowed to desire attention. You don't have to be invulnerable to be worthy. The anger you suppress, that's your boundary calling out. It's the part of you that finally says, enough. It's not bitterness, it's not spite. It's your truth asserting itself after being silenced for too long. Anger is sacred. Anger says, this is not okay. And for many of us, especially those who were conditioned to be good or easy to love, anger is the voice we lost in childhood. The shame you carry, that's not even yours. That's the residue of someone else's projections, a belief inherited from a parent, a partner, a society that told you your needs were too much, your emotions were irrational, your heart was a liability. But shame is a lie dressed as responsibility. And when you trace it back to its origin, you often find a moment where you were made to feel like your very being was a burden. None of these things make you broken, they make you human. And when you stop trying to amputate your most vulnerable parts and instead welcome them, you begin to transform, not by becoming someone new, but by finally becoming who you always were before the world told you to hide. You begin to understand that healing isn't about fixing what's wrong with you, it's about remembering that nothing was ever wrong in the first place. You were just shaped by environments that didn't know how to hold you. When you begin to love yourself at your most unlovable, that's when you become truly free. Not free from pain, because pain will still visit. People will still disappoint you. You will still feel grief. You will still feel lonely at times, but you will no longer be ruled by the compulsion to relive the same heartbreak in different forms. You'll no longer be seduced by the one who ghosts and comes back. You'll no longer chase closure in conversations that only reopen wounds. You'll no longer silence your truth just to maintain a connection, because now you understand your peace is not negotiable. Your worth is not up for debate.
You are not a puzzle someone has to solve. You are not a lesson someone has to learn. You are not a test someone has to pass. You are the love you were waiting for.
The steady presence you thought only someone else could provide. The home you searched for in their arms. And once you anchor into yourself, once you give yourself the safety you spent years seeking outside of you, no one, not even the most emotionally unavailable person in the world, can take that away from you, because it doesn't live in their hands anymore. It lives in yours.
Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate."
At first, that idea might seem poetic, something you skim past in a book or quote on social media, but sit with it. Let it sink in. What Jung was saying wasn't vague spirituality. It was a call to action, a reminder that so much of what governs our lives, especially in love, is not logic. It's pattern. It's emotional memory. It's our inner world acting itself out on the stage of our relationships. And until we shine a light on that inner world, we remain stuck, attracting the same type of person, feeling the same kind of hurt, telling ourselves, maybe this is just how love is for me. But that's not love, that's repetition. That's your nervous system chasing the comfort of what it knows, even if what it knows is abandonment.
But this moment of awareness you're in right now, this is where the cycle can end.
This is the moment you stop calling pain love, the moment you stop romanticizing suffering as passion, the moment you stop mistaking someone's inability to meet your needs as evidence that your needs are too much. This is where you stop making homes out of people who only know how to leave. People whose emotional unavailability mirrors the neglect you once experienced and never got to grieve. You stop settling for conversations that go in circles. You stop clinging to the idea that if you just love harder, wait longer, stay quieter, they'll finally get it. You realize that no matter how much you bend, you can't make someone ready. And more importantly, you shouldn't have to.
And so you let go, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity.
Because now you see the truth. Rejection isn't always about you. Sometimes it's just a reflection of their own inability to connect. And yet for so long, you internalized rejection as proof of your unworthiness. You mistook it for confirmation that you were lacking something. But rejection doesn't define you. It reveals where you've been trying to be loved through someone else's emptiness. And love, real love, it doesn't have to hurt to be real.
We've been conditioned to believe that love must be earned, that suffering proves depth, that longing equals meaning, that heartbreak is a rite of passage. But true love, the kind Jung pointed toward in his teachings, is not forged in pain. It's built on integration, on seeing clearly, on recognizing that love should never cost you your dignity, your stability, or your self-respect. True love makes you feel more like yourself, not less. It doesn't confuse you, then demand your patience. It doesn't disappear for days and call it space. It doesn't offer affection in fragments, then expect devotion in return. It is whole, not perfect, but whole. And peace? Peace is not boring. That's the lie you were taught by your trauma. When all you've known is tension, calm feels like emptiness. When you were raised in unpredictability, consistency feels strange. When your body has adapted to fight or flight, stillness feels unfamiliar. But peace
is not the absence of excitement, it's the presence of safety.
And when you learn to find beauty in emotional safety, everything changes.
You stop seeking chaos and calling it passion. You stop feeling chemistry with people who mirror your pain. You begin to crave what once felt too ordinary: kindness, presence, emotional availability. Because finally your nervous system is learning that love doesn't have to hurt to matter. And you never had to earn what you were born worthy of. That statement is not just reassurance, it's a fundamental shift. For so long, you've acted like you had to become lovable. More patient, more attractive, more successful, less emotional, less demanding, less too much. But love is not a reward for performance. It's not something you qualify for by being good enough. It's something you deserve because you are human, because you feel, because you exist. You've spent so long editing yourself just to be loved by someone else. But you were never the problem. You were just operating from an unconscious script that said love must be earned. And now that script is coming to an end. You're writing a new one. One where love doesn't come at the cost of your peace. One where affection isn't dangled like a prize, but offered like presents. One where you no longer chase closure, you create it. Because you've stopped waiting for someone else to make you feel whole. You are the love you were waiting for, the consistent presence, the soft landing, the voice that says, I see you, I'm not going anywhere. And no one, not even the most emotionally unavailable person in the world, can take that away from you. Because you've taken it back. Because this time, you know the difference between being loved and being tolerated. Between being desired and being respected. Between pain and passion. Between chaos and care. This is where your old story ends, and your real one begins.